morning, everybody. This is the day after Valentine's Day, payday, which is February 15th. And we are another doubleheader. We have Uncle Pete first, then we'll stop the recording and record Bob, who has we have three connected topics today. So I am going to get Pete back on because he's got to get to work. So hope people join in or at least listen to this later. We'll talk to you later. It's all yours,
Good morning. All right. Good morning. Well, in honor of the topic that Bob's going to be giving following me, I figured that string concatenation kind of dovetailed nicely into what he's doing. And basically, between the two of us, what we're showing you today are those nice little tools to throw in your programmer's toolbox and pull out whenever you need them. May save you half an hour doing some coding, may keep your bugs down a little bit for a little cleaner way to code. So first thing I'll show you is this conditional string concatenation is all about being able to stitch strings together and conditionally stitch parts of them together without having to write a bunch of if statements. And what I've got set up here on the screen is some examples that I wind up coding these things at least 3 times a week. I'll have to code one of these type of situations. I'm constantly having to build where clauses where I don't know what conditions may or not be coming based on other conditions. So when you build that where clause, it's where field equals 2 and field equals 3. But if they choose 1, I've got to say where field equals 1 and field equals 2. So I can't do it. I have to make sure that I get the ands in the right place. So traditionally, we would have done that with a bunch of if statements, and that's what the code behind the old button is, and we'll look at the code once we get through the demos here. Another example where I often have to do this is when you're building a URL with URL variables. You start without any URL variables, you just have the URL. You have one variable. Behind the domain, you have a question mark and then your variable. But when you get multiple variables, then the rest of the variables get an ampersand delimiting them. So that's another situation where traditionally I would have had to do a bunch of if statements to make it happen. And
Hey,
the
Pete,
third, yes, sir.
looks like you're a code bricker. You're creating code bricks on the fly.
This is just kind of a little demo to show you the statements that I'm building. But yeah, this is, you could definitely use this for something like that. Another example that I often get into is writing in statements. SQL, I may have, based on some other selections that a user made, a list of IDs, and now I need to select from another table all of the ones where that ID is included. So I may have a list. And I've got to write a statement like that. Select asterisk from table where ID in 2, 3, 4, 5. Again, would have taken a lot of extra if statements and stuff to write that. And that one, I was a little lazy. I didn't give you a way to clear that table. But if you don't have any IDs listed, notice we don't have any where clause at all. So again, my code is working in such a fashion that I'm never generating a bad SQL statement. So now let's go look at the code behind all these buttons. Let's look at the old way of coding first. Let me blow that up for you guys.
Hey, just so you know, in line 59 and 21, you might want to put condition, C-O-N, and 3.
Back off.
I just thought so.
So this is traditionally how I would have coded that where clause. You know, the first condition, if they had checked that box, I could just say field 1 equals field 2. But the rest of the conditions, I would have had to test, you know, is there something in the where clause already? If there is, then I've got to tack an and onto it before I put in the second condition. Fix these
Well, that's
because,
pretty
you know,
tricky how you did all that.
otherwise this will drive Arnold nuts. You know, we wouldn't want that.
No, don't do that.
So
Is that why it's
yeah,
always in order? Because you go down the line, huh? Every time you
right,
clear and you go, oh, okay. That's why it cleared and made number 1 the first one every time.
right.
Okay.
So this is the old way of coding, and you know it's not you know any rocket science coding, but there's some extra conditions. It's just, you know, every line of code is one more line of code that you can introduce a bug, or some programmer that comes along behind you has to understand. So let's look at doing the same thing with conditional concatenation. That is producing the exact same results.
I
And the
like that better.
magic, exactly, the magic is right here.
Oh my
What that's
God.
doing is you notice the first one is exactly the same as it was in the old way. So, but when we get to this one, the blog article I'll post has the online help that gets you to where PCSoft explains how to use these things. But let's just say that little section of the help is in Fringlish. So I struggled quite a bit figuring these things out before I was able to actually use them. But what happens here is it says, you know, plus equals. Those of us that are old Clarion programmers are pretty familiar with that, but we're kind of familiar with it from numerics, not strings. But with WINDEV, we can actually use it with strings, and that will say, instead of writing this as where clause equals where clause plus something, you can do the plus equals and add something to the end of your string. So then we have this little and statement with brackets around it. The brackets say this is a conditional concatenation. And there are a couple of different styles of this depending on whether this is listed first or second, whether or not you're doing a plus here. But what it does is, if in this instance, if the where clause is empty, then it will not include the and. It also, if the where clause already ends with and, it won't include the and. So it's a good belt and suspender type of making sure that I don't get a double and. I get an and once one of these has been filled out. If you didn't check 1 or 2, when I do 3, it won't add the and because where is empty. It'll add this, and then when we get to 4, now where clause has something in it, so it will stick the and on top of it. And then once I've built it, I just stick where in front of it.
Well, that's intelligent concatenation for sure.
And, you know, like I said, the point is, you know, this is 14 lines of code, the other is 23 lines. Doesn't sound like a lot, but that's 9 additional spots to introduce a bug, get somebody confused, what have you. You know, as I get older and wiser, I find that I make the most improvement when I don't write code.
Hey Pete, this is so much easier to read too.
Yeah, it is. It really is. Once you know what that's doing, then this is very easy to read. Yeah, let's go back and look at the old way one more time.
Ouch.
Yeah, exactly. So now let's look at the code behind the build the URL one. That is all the code that it took to build that URL. I'm looping through however many times you picked on the slider. I'm using a concatenation here. This is working the same as the AND did over on the other example. So first time through, the variables is empty, so we don't get the ampersand. We'll just get variable 1 equals value 1. Second loop through, it's going to stick the ampersand on and say variable 2 equals value 2. Then when we get done with that, then we take the domain, and now we're seeing another example of a slightly different format of conditional concatenation, where I've got it in the middle of a string. And what this is saying is if the variables is empty, don't include the question mark. So if we go back over and run that again, notice how we did not get the question mark because we didn't build any variable string. We didn't get the question mark. But as soon as we add a variable, now we get the question mark.
So Pete, so it's always related to what follows this square bracket stuff, right?
It depends. It's also related to if there were a question mark here. And don't make me a liar here because sometimes this stuff is a little hard to follow in their help. Yeah. See how we did? Oh, we only got one question mark, Arnold.
Okay.
Even though I've got a question mark here and here. The
Oh,
other
that's
part of the
pretty
condition
subtle, man.
says, yeah, the other part of the condition is if this already has a question mark, don't include the question mark.
Wow, that is really unreal.
And it also works the other way. If this started with a question mark, it wouldn't put the question mark in. If you've seen, they have the complete directory command that adds the backslash to the end of a directory variable. That's how they're doing that is conditional concatenation. If there's already a backslash there, they don't add it. If it isn't there, they do add it. It's
Oh
the
my God,
exact
that's
same
pretty
thing.
good because I have a class just to do that.
Yeah, that's actually a function in WINDEV, and all it is an encapsulation of this conditional string function.
Yeah, because that would be a good example too because that's used a lot.
Right. Yeah, the only reason I didn't use that as an example is because with WinDev, all we do is this. And that automatically sticks the backslash on the back of it.
Just doing that?
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow.
Life's hard over in the WinDev world, Arnold, if you'd ever join us. So now here's our last example, building that in clause. And this one is probably the most advanced of them, although it's the exact same thing that I did with the URL variable. It just looks a little more advanced because of the extra pieces that we're doing. So first thing we do is we take that list of IDs and we make a comma separated list. And because we're using the condition up here, we don't get a comma in front of that first variable. So now we have a nice clean comma separated list of variables. Then I use a condition here to stick an parenthesis on the back of that variable. Why am I doing that? Well, if I didn't get any, if you didn't put anything in the table, I don't want to do this so that end clause stays empty, so that this condition will also fail, and all we'll get is select asterisk from table. So if you gave me any IDs, I'm going to make 2, 3 parenthesis. Then I'm going to say select asterisk from table. I hit this condition. Since end clause has a variable, that I'm doing where ID in parenthesis, and now end clause closes that up, and once again we've got a nice clean always works statement. And I didn't write these other versions as the old style of code as well, but as you can imagine, this would probably get into 20, 25 lines of code instead of 6 lines of code.
This one's not so obvious to me.
Yeah, it's a little tougher because of what I'm doing.
So oh man,
But like I
I'm
said,
trying to get my
I'd
head
use
around this guy.
Best way to get your head around it is think about what it's doing. So we have a list of IDs. So the first ID is going to be 2, and clause is going to equal 2 because we're not going to get our comma. So we're just going to get that. Second loop through, we're going to put a comma because now we have something in the end clause. And then we're going to get 3. All right, that's the end of our loop. Then we get to the end clause here. You know what? Why don't I do this? Let's watch the debugger in action. What do you say?
I think that's another value of this WINDEV environment.
Let's 2 and 3. Okay.
Hey, can you put 4? Okay.
4?
Yeah.
All right. Okay, so here we are. And let me open up the debugger window down here, and I'll lock that for you. And we want to notice end clause is empty right now.
Okay.
All right, we come down here. The first one, all it put in end clause was 2 because it did not put the comma because at the time end clause was empty. Okay. Now next loop through, it put comma 3 because now there's something in clause. So this condition took place, and it said 2 plus comma 3. Next loop through, same way. Now we got 2 comma 3 comma 4.
Okay.
All right. So now we get down to this one. Now it's saying that's what's in the end clause, 2, 3, 4. And we're going to conditionally put a parenthesis on the end of it.
What's the condition of having the parentheses?
If the end clause was empty,
has something
we would
in it.
not, right, we would not get that parenthesis.
Okay, I'm getting it now.
All right, so now we've got 2 comma 3 comma 4. So now this condition falls in place. And because there's something in end clause, this gets stuck in. And there's our statement. Now let's go watch the same statement run. But this time we won't add any IDs. Come through here. We fell out of there because we didn't have any IDs. End clause is still empty. So this condition fails. So end clause is still empty. So now because end clause is empty, this condition also fails. And all that gets into our edit end clause is select asterisk from table.
Ah, I got it. Select star. Okay.
So think about how many lines of code that would have been in a traditional style of coding.
How about 5 times?
Yeah, you'd have an if statement up here. You'd have another if statement up here. A couple of if statements involved in getting this right. So
that's really nice.
Once you learn them, it's pretty powerful, handy. Nothing earth shattering. It's not going to solve world hunger, but again, I'm a big believer in every line of code I eliminate is probably doing the world a favor at this point.
Yeah, we used to be able to say save trees, but save power. Wow.
All right, so
Nice.
that's what I have for you today. And believe it or not, the article is already written. I all prepared today, so I will be pressing the post button on that and
Uh,
heading into the office. Hopefully, I can jump back on. I'll probably have to watch most of Bob's recording later on today, but I'm pretty anxious to see what Bob's got for us because this this was pretty simple compared to regular expressions.
yeah, that's going to be something, isn't it? Okay. Hey, thank you very much.
Hey, no problem.
Enjoy your workday.
Let's see, we got a question from Diego.
Oh, we do. Hey, Pete, have you any plans to rewriting? Oh, God.
Clear the chat, Arnold. Clear the chat.
In in what language?
Yeah, instead of English, it'd be redneckish. I'm not sure that that's a step in the right direction.
All right. So let's see. Just plain old Pete talk. That's all he wants.
I
All right.
appreciate that, Diego.
That's a great compliment. Thank you.
Yes, it is.
All righty. I'm gonna stop in the recording now. Thank you so much, Pete. That was
All
excellent.
right, no
Again,
problem, guys.
number 3 is